We are ready to start. I'm going to start the webinar, and Lubna, you can then proceed with the welcome. Lubna.
Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all. My name is Dr. Lubna Nadvi, and it is my privilege and honor to be your facilitator for this afternoon's webinar focusing on commemorating World Refugee Month. We will be having three wonderful speakers who will be addressing us on this topic today. I would like to introduce them briefly, but before I do that, I will hand over to Ms. Xolisa Zulu to introduce, or rather welcome everyone again.
Thank you, Dr. Nadvi, to our facilitator, Dr. Lubna Nadvi, to our panelists, Dr. Balungile Zondi, Mr. Bahige, and Mr. Chitete. Good afternoon. Fellow staff members and students joining us virtually this afternoon, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to be here for this important webinar. We hold this webinar every year in June to commemorate World Refugee Month. This platform gives us time to reflect, to listen, and most importantly, to acknowledge the strength, resilience, and perseverance of refugees across the world. World Refugee Awareness Month provides us with a valuable opportunity to recognize the lived realities of millions of refugees. These are people who, through no fault of their own, have had to flee their countries in search of safety, dignity, and hope. For us at UKZN, this commemoration holds deep meaning for us. It is an opportunity to honor the many refugees who form part of our university community. Many of them have endured unimaginable loss and trauma. On top of these hardships, they've had to rebuild their lives from scratch, often with limited support in a country that is unfamiliar to them. Yet, despite these challenges, they have persevered and are now contributing to the vibrancy of our campuses. Their presence enriches our universities socially, intellectually, and culturally. It is for this reason that we do not view refugees as a burden or a problem. We see them as an important fabric of our university community. Their presence reminds us of our shared humanity and the importance of creating spaces that are inclusive, safe, and supportive. UKZN has long been committed to transformation and diversity. As one of the most transformed institutions in the country, we understand that our strength in the richness of our backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. We are also guided by a vision to be the premier university of African scholarship. We're aware that in order for us to realize this vision, we must engage with the realities of the continent, including the political, social, and economic challenges that force people to leave their homes. Supporting refugee students is part of our broader responsibility as an African institution. In line with our strategic priorities, we are working to strengthen our internationalization agenda. This includes ensuring that our student intake reflects geographic and socio-economic diversity. Refugees, by virtue of their experiences and perspectives, add immense value to that goal. Thank you for being part of this important conversation today. I look forward to the insights and reflections that will emerge during this webinar. I'll take this time before I hand over to Dr. Nadvi to just introduce her as well. Dr. Nadvi is an academic and researcher based in the School of Social Sciences at UKZN. She lectures undergraduates and supervises postgraduates in the disciplines of political science, international relations, and conflict transformation and peace studies. She's an expert in political science, international relations, gender, feminist studies, civil society, Middle East, Indo-Pak, and African politics, political Islam, and social movements. She has also published in academic journals, edited several book collections, co-edited a book, and has written articles for popular publications. Dr. Nadvi has made an active contribution to various local South African struggles and campaigns, including anti-apartheid youth student movements, HIV/AIDS awareness, women and children's rights, street or informal traders' struggles, subsistence livelihoods, and fee-free higher education, amongst others. I'll now hand over to you, Dr. Nadvi, and welcome again to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for that introduction and reflections. So my task is to facilitate this afternoon's conversation. And as I mentioned earlier, we have three powerful speakers who will speak to the issue of Refugee Month. And let me just mention them briefly, after which I will introduce them. We have with us Dr. Balungile Zondi, who is a lecturer in the School of Social Sciences at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We also have with us Mr. Ladis Murulha Bahige, who is a student and is doing his PhD in space physics in the College of Agriculture, Engineering and Science at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And we have Mr. Isaac Wato Chitete, who is a student and doing his master's in science physics in the College of Agriculture, Engineering and Science at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And just to give a brief background, Dr. Balungile Zondi, as I mentioned, is based here in South Africa. Mr. Bahige is from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Mr. Chitete is from Malawi. So we have a wonderful diversity of perspectives from across the continent, and I'm sure that their perspectives will enable a richer sort of set of reflections on the issue of refugees. So the International Refugee Day is observed every year on the 20th of June, and it is a day that has been instituted by the United Nations to remember and commemorate the plight of refugees. And as was mentioned earlier by Ms. Zulu, that refugees don't really choose to leave their homes or to, seek asylum or refugee status anywhere else unless they absolutely have to, because we all know that for all of us, home is somewhere that is a safe space. But of course, if the place that we are currently in, that we live in, that we work in, is no longer a safe space for us, people have to seek safety and shelter elsewhere. And so that is why the situation of refugees emerges. We know that in current times we have many refugees around the world in different situations. We've seen how in recent times in the Middle East, we've had many people who have had to flee their home countries because of wars and instability that is unfolding there. We've seen in Europe the situation in, for example, Ukraine, which is in a war with Russia. People have had to leave their homes. And of course, over the past several decades, across the continent of Africa, across several other parts of the world, people have had to move and to leave their countries of origin to seek safety and shelter elsewhere because of war and several other reasons. So today we're going to be unpacking and expanding on these issues. And our first speaker is Dr. Zondi, who will be speaking on the topic of bridging the policy gap, confronting the challenges of African youth inclusion, and crafting strategic pathways for a resilient, unified future. And before I hand over to her, I'm just going to make some brief comments on Dr. Zondi's background. Dr. Zondi is a South African academic and public intellectual based at the University of KZN, where she serves as a lecturer in the School of Social Sciences. She holds a PhD in anthropology from UKZN, as well as degrees in policy and development studies and in sociology. Her research interests encompass public policy, development, indigenous knowledge systems, migration, gender-based violence, and social cohesion. Her work reflects a commitment to decolonial scholarship and the advancement of indigenous knowledge systems. So with that, let me hand over to Dr. Zondi to address us. Dr. Zondi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lubna, and good afternoon, colleagues. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I think it's very important that we are all present here because in as much as there is a greater expectation that I come up with solutions to the problem that has been presented. But one would also agree, as we are majority of us coming from, that there is a problem in Africa that does not only need an individual to appear as someone who knows everything, but there is a need for a collective lens in solving African problems. My topic is titled before I go to the topic itself, I think it's very much important that we also locate ourselves contextually. As an anthropologist, I think that's where one begins to think and make sense of the situation. We are in Africa, where we have seen a steady increase or an emerging trend where there is resistance, while also accepting a few of change that we have seen where some heads of states have become categorized within a youthful age. But there is also a greater concern to say we also do have a greater proportion of leaders that are quite aged, yet they think that they remain relevant to solve the current African problems. I think literature allows all of us to understand that Africa as a continent has a vast and a rapid growing youth population. However, the situation that I've just presented seems to be not taking us any further, because it is the aged that are wanting to solve our problems, the youthful problems. So the topic for today, which I wouldn't say it's a perfect topic, but I think it allows us to engage, all of us present here in this virtual space, where I said bridging the policy gap, confronting the challenges of African youth, inclusion and crafting strategic pathways for a resilient, unified future. We also reflect that in Africa, there is no unity. That has been recorded by many scholars, where Africans fight for space, where Africans do not accept who they are, where Africans judge itself based on the geographical borders that have a colonial history. And we also locate ourselves in Africa, where our South African Constitution has been critiqued and continuously gets critiques from those who believe that if the Constitution says South Africa belongs to everyone who is found to be in South Africa and in a particular point in time, therefore requires to access issues of health, issues of housing, or any basic human rights. So that's where the problem happens, because our mindset does not begin to accommodate. So here we are. If we look at our African demographics, we'd realize that a greater proportion, or there is a huge bulk of youth. So why are we not tailoring policies or allowing policies that will be championed and implemented by the youth? And I think what I'm saying also resonates with other giants that praise youthful leadership. And I would quote one. Ngozi Okonjo has widely said that the future of Africa belongs to its youth, but they're not even part of the round table. Their voices are not heard. Maybe in the South African context, the era in which the voice of youth people was heard was, if memory serves me well, in 1976, and that did not end well. However, when we make reference to a high level of student-led activism, we make reference to that. But when we even question that which has translated to the voice of the 1976, there's little that we see. The reason why we are in this problem, it is because in Africa as a whole, we do have a youth that they know that they are a youth. However, in my view, they are dismembered in terms of their activism. And I think I have already provided an answer to that, to say it is because those that have powers are quite aged and they are resisting, in my own view and analysis of the situation. They resist change that includes the voice and a high level of youth activism without them being identified as problematic youth on the streets that are toying, or that are throwing stones at buildings, or that are torturing buildings as an expression of frustration. So the definition of who a refugee is and why they are here, I believe that the first speaker has alluded to that. In my understanding or sense or interpretation of why we are here, the theme highlights the profound role of belonging, which also reflects or translate where I started. That to say there's quite a lot of issues, socio-economic issues, that are fragmenting Africa as a continent. And I've even made mention to the sense of belonging and in terms of our geographical borders. And that are not only as fundamental psychological needs, but as a powerful societal catalyst that shape our youth employment, because they are kept in small pockets. And in their small pockets, there's little that joins them together to begin to form a solidified youth agenda that represent the voice of a youth person in Africa. What we see is that the youth in different pockets in Africa, they claim to be, wanting to shape, to occupy a space, but their agenda is not solidified. Hence why even those that are quite aged, they resist change, because our youth has not formed a solidified voice. And I expand to say, in Africa, where the lingering impacts of colonialism, ethnic fragmentation, and socioeconomic inequalities persist, these are other underlying factors that make us resist the sense of belonging, the sense of oneness, the sense of accepting each other without questioning where does the person comes from. Remember, when Ms. Xoliswa presented her introduction, she did mention that when we speak of a refugee person, we are talking about someone who could be me, who has been forced to leave their countries because of war. It's not by choice. There has been violence, persecution, or fear of persecution due to their race, religion, nationality, political opinions, and then they find themselves either displaced or they locate themselves in a particular country that really should then be creating a safer space, as Dr. Nafdi has mentioned to that. So we're finding ourselves lacking the strength to forge unity as Africans. Hence why it is important that even our politics, to mention that even does not create a space for a healthy political stability in Africa. And there could be more engagement around this. So when we gather in such spaces, when we're putting policies, the failure of policies, or the poor implementation, or the poor of policies that should be translating the sense of belonging, the sense of oneness, the sense of Africanism, where an African feels safe and an African, feels a sense of belonging. We will then not be able to confront these issues that are dividing Africa. Hence why the topic that I've come up with. Then this theme calls all of us. Hence I said I may not have all the answers, but I think it creates a safer space, being this one as a start, and perhaps it would even continue from where you are each located to say, how do we then do where we are to advance that which has already been started? But because one needs to also admit that there are policies that are there, and we will also have to learn from other experiences of other countries that have succeeded, and perhaps even learn from where they have fallen short in their realization of such policies. Then the theme calls, and I repeat myself when I say, this theme calls upon policymakers and societies to reconceptualize what is youth. And I would even want to expand. Do we really have to be talking about someone who is a refugee in Africa, where we agree that we are all in Africa, and where we are all understanding what has led to these borderlines that we have been limited to? Is it really that important, or there has to be a reframing of arguments and the reframing of these borders, so that we then in Africa do away with us identifying each other as a refugee, where you have navigated in Africa, wanting to find a safer space, or wanting to make means to an end, or even make sense, or even contribute maybe in the economic growth of another country, for as long as you are still in Africa. So these are the things that I thought they are very much important for us to begin to engage in as we are here. And this reflection, in my view, naturally connects to the broader topic, the strength to belong, empowering African youth, fostering unity. If we agree, I'm just going to throw this, and I believe that in this space there are youth people. Do they really understand that the future of Africa is in their hands? And what are they beginning to do about that? Why are they not pushing boundaries to take over? And where do they need help? Because as I have mentioned at the beginning, that the problem that I have identified is that in Africa, we have leaders that have promulgated policies that are also championing these policies, yet they say that the primary beneficiaries of these policies are the youth. And those policies are not even impacting positively on the youth, and they even sometimes don't even give a well-constructed interpretation in terms of its direction and what they intended to realize. And the question that I would want to throw back to the youth to say, if you are in line with my thinking, why are you folding hands? What are you waiting for? What should really inform your first move towards taking ownership and making sure that no one is as a refugee in Africa? Or you then begin to question to say, what will then erase the identity and the status of being a refugee in Africa? What will take all of us to be recognized as Africans in Africa? And such questions are very much important, because it's not that you'll be scratching from the surface. These arguments are very contextual and relevant, because a majority of all of us here would agree that we have these issues where other people are treated badly because they are refugees. But we do have the 1969 OAU Refugee Convention. We've got the African Union's Kampala Convention. We've got the African Union's Migration Policy for Africa. And we've got many other legislative interventions that are in place that speak to that speaks to the recognition and a greater care of our African brothers. But what are the bottlenecks and what are the solutions that the youth can contribute? As I'm drawing to a close, I believe that there is a much needed strengthened collaboration from our youth across the borders in Africa, where they will sit down as a collective to say, we need to understand and analyze bottlenecks and the policies that we have in order to see how far, to first establish how far has the implementation has gone. What are the endogenous and exogenous, factors that do not translate the objectives or the intended outcomes of these policies, so that they are reframed or they are amended. And the last question that, as I'm about to close, is to say, is it really hard now that we have the technology, that we organize ourselves, to be that community that does not only entertain what happens in America, but that also creates a space where African solutions are discussed and by the youth, so that by the time we say we are making a strong knock at the door of those elderly heads of state that are currently occupying power, we have something to bargain with. And I think that's where the issues of policies will be strengthened. That's where we'll begin to see the effectiveness of policies. And that's where we will then stop having people who have been pushed by various socioeconomic challenges being classified and categorized as refugees. So the brokenness of our policies, or the poor implementation, in my own view, really needs to be fixed by the youth. And if that gets done, I think in this month we'll find another theme in the few years to come, where we perhaps reflect on the contributions of our youth. I would like to pause here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zondi, for those very important reflections and for reminding us of the very important sort of role that the policies, for example, and legislation play when it comes to the issue of refugees. Before we proceed, I want to just also reflect apologies from Dr. Catherine Ndinda, who was meant to be one of our speakers today. Unfortunately, she could not join us, so I just want to note apologies from her. I also want to remind the audience who have joined us today that you are very welcome to post your questions and comments on the chat group, and we very much welcome that, and we will have some time after all of the panelists have spoken to engage with your questions and comments. So please feel free to post those comments in the chat group. We will now move on to our next speaker, who is Mr. Ladis Bahige. And as I mentioned earlier on, he is a PhD student in space physics, which sounds quite fascinating. And he is originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he will speak to us on a reflection of my journey to South Africa and a student's perspective and challenges as a refugee. So I will now hand over to Mr. Bahige to address us. Mr. Bahige, thank you.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for being here and for giving me a chance to participate in this session. And I hope everyone is enjoying it so far. So I'll just be talking about my journey and my experience in South Africa. And so, yeah, as stated previously, my name is Ladis Bahige. I am a citizen of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and I grew up in a city called Bukavu. And then I moved to the neighboring city of Goma to live with my aunt and my cousins after I finished my high school. Well, I did so because I wanted to work and raise some funds to go to university, because I really wanted to do that to further my studies. And so one of my uncles who owned a barber shop in Goma called me to work with him. But life was quite challenging, but we tried our best to manage. So also, since high school, I was a member of the youth club of one of the prominent political parties in my country. It was called the Congolese National Union. I was even the vice president of one of the youth clubs there in my city. And even when I moved to the city of Goma, I remained very active in the youth club as well, given the fact that the youth clubs generally used to work together in many ways. And the reason why I joined that party was because at the time, it was the main vocal opposition party, or at least it was one of the main vocal opposition parties to the regime of our former president, Joseph Kabila, was in power at the time. So we felt that he was letting our country down in many ways. For example, we had rampant armed tensions, like in our region. High levels of corruption, unemployment was very high, it still is. We had bad infrastructures, among many other things. Also, one of the other reasons is the president was looking to stay in power beyond this term. And all those things were like very frustrating to us. And we were convinced to join the political party, and so that we could fight against the regime, because we felt that our future was at stake. And as our previous speaker said, the youth is very much important in the fight for our future, or at least the future belongs to the youth, as she also said. So I guess it was within the same spirits that we're also inspired to actually go on and try and I don't know, challenge the higher powers. So the thing as well that was making us fight, or at least making us speak up, was because we felt that our ruling bodies did not really show any concern. Yes, as well, the previous speaker said something about the older generation thinking they can solve the problems of now, and they can actually lead us into the future. Maybe in many ways they can't do that because they don't understand us. I don't know, but somehow they all seem to be failing abysmally. But so then another reason why I joined that political party, was the insecurity, like due to the numerous armed groups, the rebel groups that were in my regions. So at the time, it was around 2013. At that time, it was estimated that at least 100 rebel groups were active in my region, and the unrest was so high that every time one went to bed at night, the next day it wasn't really guaranteed that it was going to be any peaceful or safe. So it was the future was really a mystery. Like, it was really a mystery. So we also had a national army. We do have a national army in Congo, but it was not well equipped to handle all those armed groups. In fact, they were barely staying afloat themselves, given the fact that they have a deplorable salary. Our soldiers, they are really underpaid. I don't even know if I can call that a salary, because many of them actually they used to receive at that time an equivalent of 1,000 rand per month, and many of them actually sometimes would go months unpaid. So you can imagine the frustration that it would go through, and as a result of that, they resorted to harassing and to robbing civilian communities, and yeah, it was really bad. It was really bad. But and also, I know I'm speaking in the past tense mostly, but all these situations have not changed now. In fact, they have gotten worse in many ways. They have gotten really worse. So, and that situation back at the time, it was bad. It was so bad that there was a self-imposed curfew of around 7 p.m. So at that time, if it's 7 p.m., you're not at the house, yeah, you are really putting yourself out there for some incredible, I don't know, risk. And we felt that that was not a way to live. Ergo, with all those factors happening, I felt that the only way to fight was to speak up and expose our leaders. And all over my country, there were many other groups like the one I was a part of, and from different political parties. And although we were like from different political parties, we were all united with like two main goals, and one of which was to uh, try and get our president out of power, and to raise awareness and to fight against the other one. The second one was to raise awareness and to fight, at least to see if we can fight against those wars and to fight for peace in our regions. Uh, however, however, many of us, because okay, actually the ways we try to do that, the ways we try to raise awareness and to fight against, I mean, our ruling party was we tried to organize campaigns and to rally our people and to raise awareness, because many of our people at that time were not really informed. So yeah, information was not really a very big currency back at that time, in those days. So people were just listening to one side and then they will keep it like that. So it was very hard, actually, and also there was some sort of laziness for people to learn. So they know that this is the bad guy and this will remain the bad guy. This is a good guy, he will remain the good guy until the end. So yeah, and all of that was, we felt it was our job to actually try and talk to our communities and to tell them what was going on. But however, many of us did not really measure the risks of trying to raise against those big, powerful people who are overseeing a country in chaos. So people essentially makes themselves the law of the country, and they could do whatever they wanted without being held accountable. Well, we were young, very young at that time, so we didn't really know. We didn't really have experience in fighting against those big people like our authorities. And the other reason, the other reason why it was a little bit hard for us to do our job, to to sort of like fight against our powers, was we had some people within our own communities that were reporting and exposing us to the authorities, and to the point of us getting threats. But we were still convinced and encouraged to continue with our work, which we did until one morning we learned that our members had been killed. And one of those guys were like a close friends of mine. That, and also we had another problem of rebels, and they started nearing our cities, and they did, because they were already attacking neighboring villages that time, so it was like a constant thing going on. And now they were nearing our city and killing a lot of civilians. So that was enough for many of us and our community members to start fleeing the area. And even until now, the area where I was living, much of it is very empty. Like many villages are abandoned still to this day, and it's actually getting worse given that the tensions have escalated recently. So within a few days, I reached the neighboring country of Tanzania by boat through the Tanganyika Lake. So I reached a city called Kigoma. I explained my situation to people there, but I did not receive much help until a man took me to a truck driver who offered me to get he offered to get me to South Africa for a fee, and he told me that I would receive help in South Africa because, well, in Tanzania I even went to the Congolese embassy. I mean, not the Congolese embassy, but it was a consulate. Yeah, it was a consulate there in Kigoma. I talked to them. They didn't give really a care. So as desperate as I was, I took the truck driver and I gave him everything that I had, and we started our journey. So through Mozambique, I reached South Africa in July 2015. I was taken to a refugee center in Durban, where I met two ladies, one of which was a South African lady and the other one was a Congolese lady. And they helped me look for a job, and that's how I moved here in Pietermaritzburg, because I managed to find a job here at a mechanic shop in Church Street here in Pietermaritzburg. And also I told the ladies about my desire to pursue my university studies. So they put me in contact with a lecturer from UKZN, and thank God in February of 2016, I managed to start my BSc in Math and Physics here on the PMB campus. And I was still working there at the mechanic shop. And that is how I managed to fund most of my undergraduate studies. And today, I'm doing my doctorate in physics, where I hope I can achieve something notable. So sometimes I still find it hard to believe how things turned out for me. It does feel like a miracle many days when I think about it. And yeah, and there are many other things that I haven't said because I find them a little bit difficult to talk about. So yeah, but I am very grateful. I am very grateful for the opportunity and the second chance to life that this country has given me, and I'll forever be grateful to the people, to the country, to everyone, and to also to everyone who assisted me until where I am right now. I would not be alive today without them. And I have one hope that one day I will go back to my country and see it prosper, and I hope it happens sooner. However, it doesn't seem like it will be the case anytime soon because uh, given the worsening situation, the tensions between the DRC and Rwanda, we also have the M23 rebel groups that is becoming more powerful on a daily basis, all of which our leaders don't seem to know how to handle. But they say where there is life, there is hope. So I hope that it will be okay. And with all of that, I thank you all for listening, and I hope we enjoy the rest of this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bahige, for your reflections and your story. It's obviously a very moving story, very powerful, and we thank you very much for sharing it with us. And it has a wonderful component to it where you were able to take up the studies that you so very much wanted to pursue. So we look forward to engaging with you further in the discussion session. We will now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Isaac Watochitete, who, as I mentioned earlier, is doing his master's in science and physics, and he's originally from Malawi, and he will also be speaking on a reflection of my journey to South Africa and a student's perspective and challenges as a refugee. So I hand over to Mr. Chitete. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. I hope I'm heard here. My name is Isaac Gwatochitete. I'm Malawian. Was born in 1988. I'll be taking through my life up to where I am today. I was born in the northern part of Malawi. Malawi is just a small country, very striped, small, very small, engulfed by Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zambia. I was born there and grown up there with one parent. My dad died when I was 4. So I have been brought up by my mom. And then life was fine. I was fine with a father, but when he died, we had lost almost trust, though I was very young, that we may grow into up to where we are today. Is the grace of God. So I learned my primary in Malawi, though we had a lot of challenges in terms of maybe good basic needs at the same time. We could go in the field to cultivate. Our father left us, 3 of us. I'm the second born, a man. The firstborn was a lady. So it was like many responsibilities were coming on me. So in the farm, we could farm at the same time go to school. Farm, then go to school. But what made me to be so hardworking in class is that if I fail in class, I would know that, hey, I already have got a job which is farming. So you cannot just be farming from when you were born up to the day you die. Then you will easily die, because farming is not as easy as we think if you are doing it manually, unless you have money. So that made me to work hard. And then there in Malawi, remember, Malawi has been considered to be maybe the most peaceful country. There might be no justice, but it has been a peaceful country. It has its own problems, like maybe corruption is there, but at least we have peace. However, what made me to come to South Africa is one that is more important than anything. I have been in Malawi since my primary, then secondary I did it there. That was from 2004 to 2007. I repeated in from 4. Our school setup uses standard 1 up to standard 8. Then secondary is from 1 up to from 4. Here it is like from 4 is like grade 12 in South Africa. Yeah, I was paid fees by my mom in the first year and my uncles, but from there my aunt, who is now Prof. Ratio Fidra, at Mzuzu University, he paid fees for me from Form 3 up to Form 4. I still had to work hard, though in 2007 I didn't perform well. Then later I was like, let me go back to school. My mom continued paying me school fees when I was repeating the Form 4. Then I got good points. I went to a college which offers education. Professionally, I did education in science right away there in Malawi. Started working with a diploma, and a degree is higher than a diploma, so we could not receive. Money shall not be enough, but there should be some money that you feel like you can be using and then sustain your life and then develop in other way around. So I thought of going to upgrading. In 2018, after working for 4 years from 2014, having employed in the government, I went back to University of Malawi. So in the University of Malawi, I did my bachelor's. I finished in 2022. That in 2022, from 2018, I had all cost on me. I paid everything. There, I think our money is smaller than, very small as equated to rands. So for the period of 4 years, I had used around 5 million Malai Kwacha. Over that, I was paying fees, everything for myself. That was the trouble part of my life. There were challenges when we were young. I remember that there were famine in Malawi, like in 2000 as well as in 1998, where we could have just only one lunch, or one meal in a day in 24 hours. Those were really challenges, but this was also a challenge because paying for yourself is not easy as an orphan. Then later, I said, if I manage to pay for myself for a couple of 4 years doing my undergrad, then I think I have more to achieve. Then what happened next? Then I went back to work teaching at a secondary school, but still I could say no, let me go ahead and do maybe masters or honors. Then I started applying. Then later there was my lecturer from University of Malawi who said that there might be a chance for having a bursary from a certain program called NASP, National Astrophysics Space Science Program. It's a government entity, but it is run at the UKZN, UCT, and Northwest University. Then he gave me the chance, and then I applied. After applying, then I was shortlisted. I did all what it takes for me to have this chance. Then in 2023, after apply of the application, everything I did, like applying for SAQA to verify my degree, I did that. Then I was given the bursary. I applied here at UKZN Westville campus for registration. I did that. Then I came here February in 2024 last year. I have done my honors. Now I'm doing my master's. I will be continuing my master's starting from next semester up to till when I finish. But I successfully did my honors, graduated in May this year. This is how best I arrived here. And now I am here. As I'm speaking here now, I'm in the admin building of Westville campus. That's where I am. Yeah, I have met challenges where some of the challenges that were beyond my control. This is only in terms of maybe funds, how to support myself. But while I'm here, NASP really has done its best. I don't take it for granted. I should thank the Almighty for having this chance. But in Malawi, when I'm in Malawi, since I still work, but before I was not working, it was a hell of life, though there is peace. Maybe this is a synoptic explanation about who I am and what I've done. But way back in my village, I could do what is known as youth work, but our youth was not involved in politics. It was all about advocacy about HIV, advocacy about maybe environment, replacing trees, teaching people how to replant trees, where things like those. And when I was teaching in the central region where I teach, for me to gather funds for me to do my undergrad, I had embarked on a project where I was doing, I designed a small hydroelectric power dynamo that can support maybe 10 houses. So this, I started implementing it, but it reached at a point of where I have to distribute the energy to the society. But the problem was now money, and I needed money to finish that. At the same time, I have to pay for my fees. This simple idea was published in some local news in Germany, where I had a friend called Arnold Sartori, who had published, and I had some little funds, about 500 euros, which supported me at the university, the first year of paying fees. So that's what maybe on my own, that's what I try to do. Coming back to the first speaker about this, our theme. Yeah, I understand that being human, you have a right to life and the pursuit of happiness. Extending that shall mean that we are obliged to have all basic needs that everyone has to have. It's unfortunate that some parts of the world are having what is known as destabilization. This is something that is cooked by those who are in positions of influence. The fact that she had said that of influence has a lot to tell. Why is it that has a lot to tell? It has a lot to tell because in positions of influence, when someone is going for a position of influence, like being a president or any member of parliament, it's like you have won a lottery ticket to have free money. So when people cling into power, what happens is that they don't want to leave power. That is maybe the main problem everywhere, but more especially in Africa. I have also a belief that this thing called democracy has got a problem on its own. Yeah, we know that in every society, the way we run the society can experience what is known as a paradigm shift. But I think in our African society, we have to change this thing called democracy. We need to have got another playbook. It can be dictatorship, but dictatorship has got its own. But let's have got a serious example of saying, let's have democracy, but also let's have something that we have to define which democracy are we following, or in our democracy, what things should we follow? Because it's something that I feel was imposed by the so-called colonial but we have to synthesize so that we have a new paradigm of how we run our affairs. Like, for example, for someone to be in power in democracy, you need to campaign, and there will be people who will be supporting you. More especially, in most cases, we people who are interested, maybe those who are interested in having positions of influence in the government, they'll start campaigning. But when they campaign, there are people who support them. When they become in the positions, those people who supported you will start praying you as a uh, you start praying you as a pawn. So you will start sticking to them. In the end, you find that you are not ruling in the way or in the interest of the youth. At the same time, I am obliged to say that let the youth in the world also know that they have got a part to play in the economy or every affair of life. Simply because if you go to Martin Luther, who said, if you can't walk, or if you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then grow. But in everything that you do, you have to keep moving. At the same time, if we youth can fail to achieve great things, let's achieve small things in a great way. There has been a saying to say, the sky is the limit. If you go in the universe, there is no limit there. The limit is in our minds. So let's make our minds not to have a limit. I hope what I wanted to say, maybe this is what I wanted to say. Thanks a lot for giving me this chance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chitete, for your reflections and your story. Again, a very moving story, and I'm also very happy to hear that you have been successful in your attempts to pursue your studies. And we wish you and Mr. Bahige great success in your pursuit of postgraduate studies. So that brings us to the end of our comments and inputs from our panelists. And it is now time for our audience to come in and to engage with the presenters. And so we have about 20 minutes, or just under 30 minutes, I should say, where we have the time and opportunity to engage. And I see that there's a few comments and questions that have actually been posted. I want to just read these out, and then I'll invite the panelists to respond to these. The first comment or question is from Hussein Vauda, who has commented, I will be most grateful if the panel could please explore the reasons for the recent renewed crusade against the refugees, very much like the campaign by President Donald Trump using ICE agents in US to deport the immigrants. The question I raise is, what representation is the UKZN, or the University of KwaZulu-Natal, engaged in with the Home Affairs to tighten border corruption and apprehend criminals rather than attacking premises to apprehend refugees who are actually adding to the economic growth of South Africa? Thank you very much for that question. I don't know if the panelists want to respond to that now, or if I should just read the others. Maybe I should just go through the 3 questions. They are on the chat group, so anyone who would like to respond, we can allow you to come in. Let me just read the other 2, so that gives us, some context. Sarvanya Pata poses a question, a comment to say, it's easy to say fixed by the youth, but how do we make these tools available to youth to challenge legislation? When legislation is passed, it's done without the approval not only of the youth, but the public. How can youth better access the tools to challenge those in positions of power? Very important question, given that many of our refugees are actually within the youth demographic, and it's something that affects them quite seriously. And then a question in the Q&A box: how can we stop the allegations made to our refugees in South Africa that they take medical treatment and sell to their countries? They are the reason already that South Africans do not get treatment when they visit the clinics. The clinic is out of stock because it is taken by non-South Africans and sold back to other refugees, or even stocked up and sold to their country. I see this causing havoc because of this misleading information. So those are the 3 questions that have come in and comments that have come in thus far. So I want to give the panelists an opportunity to take on all 3 of the questions, or any one specific question that you would like to handle. So may I give Dr. Zondi the opportunity to respond first, and then we'll go on to the following panelists. Dr. Zondi, please feel free to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nafdi. My first response will go to the question with regards to President Donald Trump. I think many scholars have made attempts to understand his political will during his tenure, which of course one would need to understand that he has a very complex understanding of what a human being is. And I don't think, in as much as what he does affects Africa, but I don't think we should be paying much attention to him, not unless we study him as a problem. Because today he speaks of something else, the following day he retracts that. So he seems to be lacking, the political will and the sense of welcoming other people. So I think he looks at people through race, and it is through race that inhibits his thinking and a sense of welcoming. So I'm not sure whether that would actually make sense to the next person, but that is my own interpretation of who he is. And that also takes me back to an engagement that I had, I think in a few months ago, where I said we are having a problem, a huge problem about him, is that he is an emotional leader. So he's not rationalizing, and he does not seem to be having a contextual understanding of the political issues and related dimensions that are happening in other African countries. I'll make a typical example. He once said South Africa is doing all sorts of wrong things to a minority that, in my own view, had a fair share of economic chances, as beneficiaries of the colonial as well as the apartheid system. And then he said they need to be given a refugee status in his own country, because he does not contextualize or locate himself in a correct context. It appeared that whatever claim that he had about South Africa was not the true reflection. So for him, I think he's wanting to be a popular person whom we will not learn as much as we should be learning from political leaders of this current time, for us to even begin to check whether we needed to continue from where they would probably, stop leading and we take over as the youth of today. So that's my take on his political position in contemporary times. The second question, which I'm also reading here, I think the two important speakers have sort of a given response. One needs to appreciate the fact that their resilience, comes stronger from the narrative and related experiences that they have shared in this space. And I believe that it really makes us all here believe that yes, of course, challenges are there, but it begins with your sense of wanting to see change. And I believe that he also spoke on a very relevant issue that I also brought up as a solution, to say, now that we are part of a fast-growing technological space, I think, and I strongly would want us to engage on that, to say, how can we use the time that we have on the social media to put ourselves together so that we even get to learn from them and how they had really navigated the space, and there are already gains from a bitter history that could have pushed them from their original spaces, and we hear them saying now others they invented things that benefited not only them. Yes, of course, there was a reciprocated gain where they had to supply energy and then be able to pay for their school fees, for their university fees. And we also had the first speaker saying that he will now be starting with his PhD. And it's a process of navigation, which in anthropology we recognize as a path that obviously would not bring a greater joy, but at least one is navigating from point A to point B. The challenge that I have also alluded to in my earlier presentation is that sometimes we want it to be there, but we also build bridges in front of ourselves. So in the interest of time, I would then say we still need to form a solidified position as the youth in Africa, so that we make submissions to these political heads of states that are currently, to say, this is what we want you to see as part of policy changes. And it could not only be in those policies that are in frameworks that are speaking to issues of refugee, but to quite a lot of intersecting issues that are quite pressing, and which are also not translating the voice of the youth. Secondly, I believe that now that we accept that we are in Africa and that's where a greater part of problems are happening, I think we need to foster what I think has only been mentioned in ideology, but from an anthropological perspective, I believe that it is practical, that which is the Pan-African Youth Solidarity and civic engagement. Let us stop looking at ourselves, through these borders, because we know the history of these borders. Let's just understand and receive each other beyond these borders and begin to identify that we all relate to, and then submit a very concrete policy statement that is proposed in order to see change. I do believe that if we have the fear of not starting, we will not start. Hence, these elderly people would continuously want to occupy the space at their own benefit. And by the time they retire, I don't think there will be Africa, but there will be something else. And history will judge us because we have not done anything. There is a fear. So I think we need to self-rehabilitate ourselves from the fear and begin to start. Even in policy and development, there's something that we called incremental, thinking and decision making, and that should also be informed by a well-framed, a policy agenda or policy statement that translates the voice of the youth. I would like to pause here. Thank you so much, Dr. Nab.
Thank you, Dr. Zandi, for your responses to those questions and comments. I'd like to invite Mr. Bahige to respond if there's anything you'd like to share. And then when all three of the speakers have spoken, I will do a brief summary of the comments and the webinar. Mr. Bahige, over to you.
I don't think I have much to add on what the Dr. Zondi just said. So yeah, I think she has said everything, especially with the thing she talked about with the youth. No, sorry. There is a question that asked about how can the youth actually do anything if there are gatekeepers, and those gatekeepers happen to be old. And so I really don't have a good answer to that, because we tried to to fight those gatekeepers, and it didn't work very well for us. So that is the only way I know how to do it, and it doesn't seem to be as effective. So my only hope is that one of the older people actually realizes that they are not really capable of doing the job, and out of their own consciousness, they try and change the policies that so that they can allow maybe the fresher minds to step in and try and make a change. Yeah, that's my answer, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bahige, Dr. Bahige. Or I'm going ahead of myself, but you will be Dr. Bahige soon, I'm sure. And
Thank you.
let me now ask Mr. Chitete to respond or comment, if you'd like to, on some of the questions and comments. Thank you.
Yeah, what I have always observed is that now we need to, as youth, we need to show action. Action not in terms of demonstrating, action not in terms of vandalizing, but action in terms of doing what we want to do. There might be financial constraints, but let's try to show something that here we can do, so that all those who are odd timers, they should check that, I think this is something that we can take. Otherwise, if we just say it's our time by mouth, it's our time, nothing. Let's do something so that they see that we are really capable. Because one, we need to have got high self-esteem. We need to accept who we are. We need to accept what we can do and show them. After showing them, they will see that, no, I think our time is gone. These guys, these youth can really show what they do, because cowards die before their day. By speaking, we are not cowards, but as well at the same time, by showing action, it means we are more not to be coward. That's what I can say. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chitete, for your input. I don't see any further questions or comments that have come into either the chat box or the question box. So I will now use this opportunity just to summarize the webinar. Let me begin by all of our panelists for really powerful and profound insights into the subject, and certainly to our student lists for narrating their life stories. These have been very powerful living documentaries, really, of your experiences and the path, the journey that you have taken from your home countries to South Africa and to come to study at UKZN, and to Dr. Zondi in terms of the broad framework that you outlined regarding the sort of policy frameworks, the role of the youth, and of course many of the other issues that impact on the refugee community. And I think all three of the speakers spoke to the importance of, first of all, understanding the plight of what a refugee goes through. As all of us have said, that it is not an ideal situation to be in, to be away from your home, your place of origin, sometimes in a unfamiliar space, and obviously other people looking at you as someone who is a outsider perhaps, or a stranger, a foreigner. There's all of these terms and labels that get used to describe people who come from outside. Yet refugees are not really strangers. There's a very famous saying that goes, "No one is born illegal." And what that means is that we, as states and governments and officials, and even policy analysts and so on, create these labels to call people names. There was reference made to the policies of the United States government and its current president, President Trump, who has a policy of trying to criminalize people who are seeking, either refugee status or asylum in the United States, and to try and go after them as if they have done something wrong, or they are criminals, or they are illegal. So the most important thing that we have to actually remember is that no human being is born illegal. And if at some point you find yourself in a situation where you are forced to leave your home, a place of origin, your country, and go somewhere else, you are still not illegal. You might not necessarily have obtained the necessary papers, and of course there are systems in place that are there to help you do that. But I always try and remind all of the foreign nationals I meet who might be going through the situation, that you need to realize that you are a human being first, and that your status as a human being will never change, and the dignity and respect that you are entitled to is very, very important. It's actually entrenched in the sort of human rights culture that, especially in South Africa, that we have fought for. So we know that in South Africa we've had incidences of xenophobia, we've had challenges in this regard, but as people in the higher education sector, in terms of the activist spaces, in terms of the broader refugee community, we are working, and we need to work to ensure that refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers are all given the same respect and dignity that South Africans or people who are born in South Africa are given. So in terms of a broad understanding, Refugee Month is a very important time, and certainly Refugee Day, which is observed on the 20th of June, as I've mentioned, is a very important time for us to remind ourselves of the reality that we have situations in the world today. We have conflict situations, we have political instability, we have violence, we have, economic decline. So even if there is no conflict, people sometimes leave their homes because there's no economic opportunities for them, and they seek safety and economic opportunities elsewhere. They should not be treated like criminals. They should not be treated like illegal persons. So it's very important for us to remind ourselves of that. I want to also just speak to, and I will conclude on this point, there are 2 or 3 major conflicts that are happening in the world at the moment. There's, of course, the genocide that is unfolding in Gaza. And for those of us who are familiar with the Palestinian situation, know that from 1948 onwards, we have one of the largest populations of refugees in the world because of the sort of exodus of Palestinians who had to leave their homeland and go and settle elsewhere, or were forced actually to leave their homeland. So we need to remember that the Palestinians who are refugees around the world are struggling to, of course, return to their homeland and, of course, a free Palestine. And that's an important challenge that, they still face. There are many people who were forced out during the Syrian war that are still in exile. They became refugees. There are obviously people who have had to leave their homes as a result of other wars that have been happening around the world. In Africa, we know about the DRC situation, we know about Sudan, and there are other conflicts that are continuing. So the challenge of refugees around the world continues. And if we do encounter anyone who has fled a conflict situation, our first instinct must be to give them the respect and dignity that you yourself would like to be shown, and to welcome them as a fellow human being, as fellow Africans, if they are from the African continent, but just as fellow human beings. And that is so important for us. There's also the conflict that is unfolding in Europe between Ukraine and Russia at the moment. We know that there are many people who have also fled from Ukraine to other parts of the world. So I could mention many other examples, but just in the time that we have, I want to affirm the importance of recognizing the humanity of refugees, the absolute, in the same way that we would perhaps respect someone who has, lost all of their personal possessions in, say, a flood or a natural disaster, or whatever the case may be, and show them empathy. It is very important that we show respect and empathy and warmth and love, if I can use that word, towards all those who are actually refugees and who have had to leave their homes. So let me close on that point. I want to once again thank all of our panelists, Dr. Zondi, Mr. Bahige, and Mr. Chitete, for your comments, for your input. I want to thank our audience for your questions and comments and attendance and participation in this webinar. And I want to thank Ms. Zulu for her opening remarks, and Ms. Pam Adams and others from the University of KwaZulu-Natal who have put this webinar together. I thank you very much for having attended today, and I wish you well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.